Welcome to CUTV News, where we celebrate and showcase some of the most amazing people around the world. I'm your host, Jim Masters. Today, I have the great honor and pleasure of speaking with noted author Roxanne Bland. Roxanne describes herself as a fugitive from reality since forever. She grew up in Washington, D.C., where she discovered strange and wonderful new worlds through her local public library and bookstores. These and other life experiences have convinced her that reality is highly overrated. Her story is one of resilience and determination as well, as she attended law school, delved into the workforce, and even faced illness, yet she never stopped writing. Roxanne's specialty is fiction, and she's the author of The Underground, her first published book, and the Moreva of Astoreth. She says she likes to meld fantasy, science fiction, horror, romance, and erotica into her stories. Roxanne Bland is my guest today on CUTV News. Roxanne, welcome to CUTV News. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, tell us if you can, you've been writing since you were a child, and was there a source of inspiration for your wanting to write? Did you want to escape? Was there a desire for fantasy? I mean, some people, when they start things as a kid, there's things around them that spur their interest in their activity. What was your inspiration as a child for wanting to write at such a young age?
I think it was just that I wanted to write. I learned to read when I was 3. My sister taught me to read. And then when I learned to write, I wanted to write down everything that I read. And then from there, I graduated to things that I saw, things that I saw, things that I didn't see. And then I started making things up. And the next thing I was writing stories. I'm not sure you can really say it was an escape per se, as it is something I just really enjoyed doing.
Now, when you were writing at such a young age, did you have people saying to you, this is a gift that you have that needs to be nurtured and fostered, and almost, I mean, because of the type of writing that you were doing at such a young age, the imagination that you had and continue to have, I'm sure there were a lot of people around you that were maybe spurring you on to say, this is something that truly is a gift and you should continue on with. Almost like you're ahead of your time.
No, I didn't have that kind of encouragement. It's because I think at that time I was really into music. I'm a very talented musician, and I think that's the direction people wanted me to see. People wanted me to go into, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And also, too, it wasn't until I was in 10th grade in high school that I had a teacher who actually said, you should consider becoming a writer. And of course, by that time, I was going to be a career musician. So a writer.
What types of music? What was the interest? Was it classical, instrumental,
I was
jazz?
Classical. I'm a trained classical pianist. I was interested in jazz, and I loved jazz and things like that, but I didn't play it mainly because I had never taken a course in improvisation. And so even though I knew the scale,
right,
I didn't know how to put it all together.
To just write.
And that would have been a class on improvisation. And by that time, I had lost my ear for my natural ear for music.
Right.
And so it was hard for me to actually, follow along with the notes and play actually in the right scale.
Right, exactly. Now tell us about the kinds of material that you were drawn to when you were a kid, when you were younger, mysteries, horror. I mean, what was the type of material that really interested you as a child? I know Agatha Christie was big for you, and you were always in line when there was a Stephen King novel out or others. Tell us about that type of material when you were younger.
Well, I think that, first of all, let me say that I have always read science fiction and fantasy. That has always been a mainstay, if you will, of my reading. As for mysteries, I loved Agatha Christie because it was a life that I knew nothing about. And reading it was like, this is just so amazing that people actually lived this way. And I just had this sense, and as I read other, like, P.G. Wodehouse and other people, I realized this is not made up. People actually lived this way in Britain in the 1920s. Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating to me. And of course, I liked the mystery aspect of it too. I could never figure out who did it. Other people, oh yeah, I knew that. I was like, well, I didn't. And so I really liked Agatha Christie. As for Stephen King and Peter Straub and the rest of them, first of all, the writing is really good writing. I mean, I didn't realize this. I mean, how good it was until much later in life when I became a writer myself. But what I enjoyed without realizing it was their writing. They are really, really good writers. Yeah. And secondly, what I enjoyed was a good scare. Oh, they scared me. I remember the first time I read Salem's Lot. I was about 12 or 13. It was the middle of July in Washington, D.C. I had all of the windows down. I was sleeping in my clothes, just in case. I had 100-watt bulbs. I took all the bulbs out of the lamp, the closet, the 3 bulbs in the ceiling.
Yes, yeah.
I replaced them all with 100-watt bulbs.
So.
And you know how much heat those things give off.
See everything.
Yes. If there were vampires coming after me, I was going to see them. I might not be able to do anything about it, but I was going to see them. They weren't going to do this in the dark.
You get a chance to get out of there.
And, D.C. with all the windows closed in July. Oh, it was so hot.
200 degrees and
humid.
And...
But I wasn't moving.
Your story, too, in just my research for this interview, and we had chatted prior to the interview, you are a woman of many talents as well. You're resilient, your stamina is incredible, your determination. You went through law school, incredible. Like you say, a career musician has always been a desire. You entered the workforce. You even had to go through a little illness, things in life that a lot of people deal with. And at the same time, you never stopped writing. Writing was still something that you always managed to be able to have room for, time for, and a passion for. And that does take passion and resilience, determination, and stamina to continue to do that. Why do you think that is? What is it about writing for you personally? Does it provide a sense of balance, harmony, joy, happiness, all of the above?
That's a very good question. And I think that I write mainly, if only, for the sheer joy of writing. I love to write. And it's even gotten to the point I don't care what I write. I just love to write. My what in the industry, well, not in the industry, but I guess it is in the industry. We call our day jobs. I write. I'm a writer. I'm a columnist for a magazine. It's not exactly what I want to write about, but it's writing, and it's got an element of creativity to it that previous employment didn't have. And but I just love to write. I love to create. I love creating these worlds. I love interacting with these worlds. I used to say it's always great to be God, which is really what you are when you're creating these worlds.
When you're creating these worlds.
You know what can and cannot be done, but that's part of it. That's only part of it. The real joy is just in writing itself, to put the words together and to find just the right word, to go into this sentence. Because, there are lots of words that mean, well, they're called synonyms. There are lots of words that mean very similar. They mean the same thing, but they don't have quite the panache.
Right.
And so you search for the right word, and that's really kind of fun.
You say that you're, which I said in the open to this segment, you're a fugitive from reality since forever. Tell us about that.
Oh, I've always had an imaginary life. When I was a child, I had all my imaginary friends who were always with me. When I was 4, my father told me this story often. When I was 4, we went to the 1964 World's Fair in New York. And I was holding his hand and just talking away. And my father said, well, who are you talking to? And at that time, I was talking to Blue. Blue was a dog. And I said, I'm talking to Blue. Or I might be talking to Wolfie. Or I might be talking to, but I had these imaginary friends.
You might have been onto something really, really early back then. You know why? Because now today you see people walking around talking to themselves, but what they're talking to is Bluetooth.
Yes.
So you might have been ahead
I
of your
might
time
have been ahead
on
of my time then, yes.
An invention early.
Yes, so unfortunately, I was a little way ahead of my time, and I was a little too small to take advantage of it. But at any rate, I had an imaginary life ever since I was a kid. And I had my imaginary friends, and I wrote about my imaginary friends when I was able to write.
Yeah.
And that's really what fugitive from reality for forever means, ever since I was a little kid.
You also say reality is overrated. Tell us about that too. Reality being overrated.
Simply that I would rather be in a world I created or even a world someone else created than having to deal with the everyday banalities of everyday life. Having to pay bills, having to do this, having to do that. It's just so banal. I'd rather live in the exciting world of my own making or of somebody else's own making, where there are dragons and elves and things like that, rather than car wrecks.
So the Wizard of Oz and things of that nature.
Wizard of Oz is too tame.
Wow.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
too tame.
Yeah.
But here's an example of the banality of existence. I have to take my truck to get it inspected for Maryland's VEIP. I'll probably end up doing it like the day before, because it's just, I don't want to think about that. I want to think about something fun. Like, what is my alien going to do when she finds out X, Y, and Z, Yeah, that sort of thing.
That's interesting.
Much more fun.
So it's not a matter of escapism for you from the harsh realities of life or the chaos of life? Because we all go to our own little space within to be able to decompress and to de-stress and to sort of figure it all out, and then we go back out into the world and take on that day again. Does this help you do that when you're writing and you're creating?
I don't even. Well, when I'm writing, I'm in my own little world.
Yeah,
yes, I mean that's definitely.
There's a freedom to that, isn't there?
There is. But when I say that reality is highly overrated, I think it's mainly that what, I've got to live here, I have to do these things, and it's just people who say that who believe that, oh, this is great, the world, I love the world. It's like, you need to be on some medication. It's just overrated. I mean, I'd rather go do something, something more creative.
So is your mind always thinking and racing and creating? Are you always on?
Yes.
Everything, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No matter what I'm doing, I mean, even when I have to pay attention to something, a part of my mind is always creating, is always making things up. And sometimes, even when I'm paying attention, when you have that momentary lapse, because you need a break, you have that momentary lapse of attention, something fantastic will make its way through.
Right. When you least expect it,
When
too.
you least expect it.
Sometimes you have no idea, and then you put it together like, oh, okay, that
Right.
was supposed to happen.
Right.
That's amazing.
Right.
You know, sometimes people say that we do need a little more fiction, a little more non-reality in our lives to deal with the reality of life. Are you a believer in that? Do we need to sometimes get out of our own way?
Oh, yes. I'm a firm believer in that.
You said that fast.
No, I am. I'm a firm believer in that. I think too much reality can warp a personality.
And our society is
And
very
our society
built on
is
so much reality.
reality,
In your
yeah.
face, you know, the movies, the music, the TV shows,
Exactly.
the films, breaking
Exactly.
news, everything is. It can also cause people to feel like the world is ending all the time, to feel depression, to feel like, what's the point? Because the world is on fire around me and I'm not large enough to correct it or fix it or smooth it out. That's what happens sometimes when there's so much reality in our faces, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that it's really a question of, I think it's information overload.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, something happens and immediately it's on the internet.
We lose our imagination too.
And we do.
We need to have imagination.
We do. We do.
Technology is doing everything for us now too. Press this button, do this, do that. And where's the imagination? It's almost going away in a way.
I think what's happened is, you know, the wonders of we have, oh, how do I want to say this? We have embraced the wonders of technology, but what we didn't realize was that technology, if this is going to make sense, technology is going to embrace us. It's going to take away from us some things that we took for granted.
Human connection.
Human connection. And,
relationships.
Right. I mean, look at Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on
Twitter.
Facebook, I admit it, you know.
Well, you almost
And
have to be now. It's like a Rolodex. It's like becoming.
It is.
It's replacing the cup of coffee at the diner.
It is. And I see people who say, well, so-and-so is my best friend.
And they don't know them and never knew
And
them.
they never met them.
And we'll never know them.
And we'll never know them. And
It's like a big psychological experiment, isn't it? To see how people react to each other, friend, unfriend, and it's really it's a story unto itself in a way,
there is a story in there.
isn't there?
And I think
I see those wheels turning.
And I think Zuckerberg was bought out for that very purpose. There's a story in there.
Tell us about, we're going to talk about the book, The Moreva of Astoreth, in a minute, but I just want to back up a little bit for our viewers. There was the first book, The Underground. Tell us about the inspiration for that book being your very first published book. That's an accomplishment to do that. What was that book about?
Well, first of all, it was about a werewolf caught in a bitter love triangle with a mage and a vampire who falls for an amnesiac space alien who may or may not be a serial killer. The characters for that book have been floating in my mind in one guise or another for years. So I would have been X number of years old when I wrote it. So they have been floating in my head for at least 20 years. Like I said, in one guise or another.
Right.
And so finally, you know, after I fell ill and started writing, I said, you know what? I'm going to write these characters down. And I said, I want one to be a werewolf. I want one to be a vampire. Because I was getting really into paranormal, well, not paranormal romance so much, but just paranormal.
Right.
And I said, I want to do paranormal, and I want to do something a little different, because I'm going to throw an alien in there. And have one of my characters be an alien. And it worked. It worked fine. I mean, you know, they say that you shouldn't mix science fiction and fantasy. Well, I didn't know that, so I did. And it worked fine. However, I will say that the feedback I got on that book was so wonderful, I'm actually doing a second edition.
Of that really?
Book.
Continuation.
Yes.
What was the feedback like?
Well, for example, one woman wrote and said, you know, I realize the elves are not the heroes of the story, but I would like to have known more about the elven society. And it hit me like a ton of bricks because I was like, you know,
You didn't
I
expect that.
never even thought of that. I
Right.
never even thought of the elves.
Isn't that cool when you get that feedback from people, whether it's a movie, it's a book, what have you, and they're so ingrained in the storyline and they feel so connected to the characters that they almost offer suggestions or they want more. I would imagine too, and I know firsthand even myself, that you also become attached to those characters. Those characters in your books are your babies.
Right.
Tell us about that, what that is like when you're writing a story or writing a book, a screenplay, whatever it is, and you develop these characters. You feel really connected to those characters as the author, as the writer, don't you?
Yes, you do. And if they have to die, it's very hard. It's very hard, which is why none of my main characters die. The peripheral ones do. They drop like flies. But my main characters, so far, my main characters do
But
not
you never
die.
know, so you have to read on.
Exactly.
You never know what happens.
But my main characters basically do not die because they are your children. And I've known writers who, when they've had to kill off one of their creations, they actually mourn. They go through a period of mourning.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
it's like an actor taking on a role. They become so absorbed in the role that they're performing that sometimes it becomes a part of their daily life and they don't know when to turn the switch on and off. Now, you also have Blackrose Press, which is your publishing company and your publishing arm. Was Blackrose Press created for the underground initially? The first book?
No. Blackrose Press was created as a vehicle for publishing science fiction, fantasy, horror, and weird bizarro by people of color. The Underground, the Moreva of Astoreth, and the book after Moreva of Astoreth, they're experiments. I'm the guinea pig. You know,
Right.
I'm learning the publishing industry through publishing my own books.
Which is a whole other
Other ball game.
Right, huh?
And so once I feel comfortable enough, which I'm thinking is probably 2018, I'll start accepting submissions from outside.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because right now I've got a Blackrose Press website, but it really needs revamping.
Yeah.
But it's still available. I mean, it's still live.
It's still there, right.
And it really needs revamping. But in fact, if you go there, you can see the first 3 chapters of The Underground are up. So if you want to read a little bit about The Underground.
So you can get some samples.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's this book, The Moreva of Astoreth, and what an incredible text this is. Tell us about the inspiration for this book and a little bit about the storyline. This is great reading. You're going to get lost in this. This is not something you're going to want to put down, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Actually, the inspiration for this book, you could say, started 35 years ago. 35 years ago.
Did it really?
Yes. A friend and I in college, and I see I'm really dating myself. A friend and I in college collaborated on this story. Just something to do. And we collaborated on this story, and it was about, I don't remember the details. I mean, that was too long ago. But I never forgot the basic storyline, which is a woman, the daughter of a king, is exiled because she will not marry the man her father has picked out for her. So she wanders around the kingdom. No village will take her in. Finally, she turns north. After many adventures, she turns north. And at seemingly the end of the world, she finds a village that will finally take her in. The village chieftain is immediately enamored of her, but doesn't want his villagers to know because she's a stranger. The woman genuinely dislikes the chieftain. And after a period of being at each other's throats, she falls in love with him, and he confesses his feelings for her, and they marry. Meanwhile, Daddy is feeling remorseful that he exiled his daughter, so he goes looking for her, gathers his army and goes looking for her.
Right.
Can't find her, can't find her, can't find her. So finally, deducing that she has turned north, he takes his army and goes that way too. Well, they find the village. He demands that she come back with him, and she says, no, I'm married now and I'm happy. And the father threatens war, and the chieftain accepts. And the woman and the chieftain are killed in the fighting. Not a very happy ending, is it? Well, years later, I read Zecharia Sitchin's Earth Chronicles works. Are you familiar with Zecharia Sitchin? Okay.
Yeah.
I read his works, and you know, he has his loyal adherents and his scholarly detractors.
Absolutely.
But you know what? You cannot deny it is an incredible story. Just an incredible tale. So, so anyway, you know, again, years pass, and then I'm sitting there kind of stuck on a story. Not stuck in the sense that I don't know what's going to happen next. I know what's going to happen next. It's a question of how to write it. And, you know, so I sat back and I was thinking and thinking and thinking, and I let my mind wander. You know, I was like, oh, forget this. Just leave it alone for a while. And I thought about my friend and the story we wrote, and I thought about Zecharia Sitchin. And then I said, what if I could meld the two stories in some way? That would be so cool.
Melding is something you really enjoy. Even when you meld the different genres together,
Yeah.
you really love weaving in and out of.
Yes, I
don't
do.
You?
And so the end result was the Moreva of Astoreth. It's a melding of Zecharia Sitchin and this story that my friend and I concocted in college.
So describe for us the title of the book, what it actually means, if people are not familiar with the Moreva of Astoreth or what the words are tied to.
Well, Moreva is a word that I made up. It means priestess. The Morevi is the male equivalent. That's a priest. Moreva describes the universe of Moreva and Morevi. They're just priestesses. It means the priesthood. Moreva, I guess you could say, means the priesthood. Astoreth is a variant of Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess. I guess she's Babylonian, but she's Sumerian, goddess of love, and so on and so forth. There's Ishtar. There's Astarte. You know, they all have very similar names.
Yeah.
But that's what Astoreth is. It's a variant on Astarte, or however her name is pronounced. I can never remember because there's so many different ways it's pronounced.
How long did it take you to write this book, beginning to end?
Okay, from start to finish, it probably took me about 16 to 18 months. And part of that is because of the day job.
Sure, yeah.
And if it would have taken half that time if I could write all day and all night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the genesis was 35 years ago?
35 years in the making, yeah.
The cover is absolutely incredible. Tell us about this cover and the design and how that came to be. It's really amazing. It's beautiful.
Well, it's kind of funny. That book originally had a different cover.
Did it?
Yes. And it was done by this outfit in England. And it was so bad. So I ditched it. I just grew to hate the cover, so I finally ditched it. And I was asking around, does anybody know a good graphic artist, a cover artist? And a friend of mine said, yes, me. I am learning graphic art and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Design. I mean, she already did graphic art, but she's really 3D modeling design. That's what it is.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know anything about this stuff.
Yeah.
3D modeling. She was learning how to do 3D modeling. And so she said, I can do your cover real cheap. Sure. So, and that was actually her idea.
So this she represents.
That's Tehi,
That is-
Moreva Tehi, and Tehi is a scientist. So you see all the scientific paraphernalia around her, the
Yeah.
flasks. That little thing is called a scratch. Think of a laboratory mouse.
Yes.
And she's discovered something, that glowing disc. But that was her. That was my friend's idea, because I had a different idea, and she said, "Well, that style went out 30 years ago." Okay. And
you're still friends?
oh yeah, we're still friends. We're still friends. And then I had another idea, and she said, "No, because the thumbnail."
Yeah, it has
She said
to
the
be.
characters are going to be too small. You're not going to be able to see them in the
So
thumbnail.
she was a great help. Yeah,
So yeah,
a
she
great
was right.
resource.
She was right.
What do you hope readers take away from this book? There's really nothing like this out there right now. What do you hope is the takeaway?
I truly hope that this book will help readers to understand that bigotry is a soul-crushing affliction, and that what they need to do is to face that bigotry, face themselves, and find out why that bigotry exists, and then do what they can, do what they need to do to overcome it. Now, what you need to do might be different things,
Right, right.
but they need to find out what they need to do to overcome it, because otherwise it'll crush them, it'll destroy them.
So is it your desire, or does it just tend to happen, that there are lessons to be learned in your works?
I think it just tends to happen. I don't consciously set out, to write stories, with morals and things like that. I don't consciously do that, even though sometimes they end up being in there. I don't do that consciously. I think it just ends up that way. Like, I don't know why she is a bigot. There are so many different ways I could have written that.
Sure.
But I don't know why she's a bigot, but she is. That's just the way it came out.
Right.
And the fact that she realizes it and realizes she has to do something about it before it kills her, that's part of the story. Yeah, that's part of the message, but that's not necessarily a message I consciously started out with.
Exactly, right.
So.
They say writers and authors pour a lot of themselves into various characters within their works, whether it is a screenplay, whether it is a book, or both. How much of you are in your books?
All of me. All of it. All of it. I'm every character. Every character is a facet of me.
Elements of you in every single one.
And even the bad guys. Every character is a facet of me. That is doubly true for the underground.
So that's a great form of expression for you.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I suppose if I were a dancer, I would choreograph very strange scenes and things like that, but because I'm not a dancer, and never will be, writing.
Never say never.
Never say never.
Never say never, right? Right?
Well, that's true.
Right.
But writing is my thing. Writing, that's how I totally express myself through my writing. And it's so cathartic.
Yeah.
Each book I write is just so cathartic.
The other part, too, is you're touching people in various ways. And that, again, happens on its own. Like you say, people are participating in the characters, participating in the storyline. They're rooting for this one. They don't like this one. and they want more of it. And that has to make you feel so fulfilled and satisfied, whether you set out to do that or not. But in the end, when people come up to you and they read a book like this, or The Underground, or your future works coming down the line, it must be so gratifying when you get that feedback from people. It's got to be incredible.
It is. It is gratifying because you know that there are people out there who share your vision and who get your vision, who understand your vision. But I have to tell you, I mean, I have received over 50 reviews of this book, most of them 5 and 4 stars.
Congratulations, that's terrific.
But the ones that interest me most are the 3 stars, because there are a number of the 3 stars that say exactly the same thing. I mean, word for word. I mean, it's like, did you guys collaborate or something? You know, and
Pretty incredible.
yeah, and the thing is that look, there's an old joke that says, if someone calls you a donkey, you brush it off. If a second person calls you a donkey, then you need to think about it. If the third person calls you a donkey, then it's time to buy a saddle. And in my case, it's time to buy a saddle. Because the things that they said, I am going to apply to my next book so that it doesn't, so that I don't repeat the mistakes that I made in this one. What they consider mistakes. I mean, look, when 5 people are saying the same thing.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, word for word, when 5 people are saying the same thing. I mean,
And is that just your mother, father, and sisters, or?
No, these are total strangers.
These are the strangers.
So when they're all saying the same thing, that's something you really got to look at.
Yeah.
You really got to watch out for.
Without deviating fully from your own vision
Exactly.
and your own.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that can be done. I think
Right.
it can be done. From what they were saying, I think it can be done. But yeah, but you're right. The 5 and 4 stars are very gratifying, and and they do make you feel good, and it does act as impetus to keep writing. It does.
For you.
For me.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah.
Which is, like you said, more of The Underground coming. What else is on the horizon for you beyond what you've
The
already?
second edition of The Underground.
Yeah.
I'm writing the sequel to The Underground right now as we speak. The second edition to The Underground of The Underground is with the editor right now. The second edition I'm drafting. I mean, the second sequel I'm drafting. And that will be, I am hoping that will be out by the summer of next year, the summer
great,
of 2017. Yeah. I'm hoping it'll be out by then. And I'm having a great time writing the sequel. It's a lot of fun. But I also want to do a thriller, a science fiction thriller set in a dystopia. Now, dystopias have been basically done to death, but this is going to be a dystopia. And
which is, in case somebody doesn't know what that is.
A dystopia is, it's the future, it's very bleak. Think of Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Blade Runner, the world is a dystopia.
Right.
I am going to write, I want to write this thriller about a psychiatrist who is bound by law not to tell the police anything. And the client of his tells the psychiatrist that he's going to commit a murder, and he tells him who, gives him the whole 9 yards, gives him the whole, everything. And the police are on to the killer because the killer left something, the killer did something.
Yeah.
And the police know who he is, they're after him, but the killer thinks the psychiatrist told.
You're going to have to stay tuned for the rest.
Exactly.
If that doesn't hook you, RoxanneBland.com is your website as well. And of course, it's going to be on Amazon and so much more.
Roxanne.com. RoxanneBland.com is my blog.
That's fantastic. You got a blog too?
I have a blog too.
Wow.
My author website is roxannebland.rocks.
Oh, nice.
So I've got
So say that again.
roxannebland.rocks, as in stones.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I like that. That's cool.
I did too. I said, I gotta have it.
So tell us about, you know, a lot of times when you do work, it encourages others who are starting out themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what words of encouragement could you bestow right now to maybe a writer who wants to write, or somebody who wants to really get into this line of activity, but who doesn't know how to really start and to do it and keep at it?
Well, first of all, what you need to do is sit down and start writing. Just write.
That's a great way to...
That's right. That doesn't matter what you write, just write. It also doesn't matter if it's garbage, because that's called the first draft. But write as often as you can. The common wisdom is that it has to be every day, but I don't know. I know very few people who have the time to write every day. So write as often as you can, and just keep writing, you know, and read. You must read. Read the authors you like to read. Read outside your genre, you know, that you like. Just read, because invariably you will find writers, whether they're in or without your genre, whose turns of phrases appeal to you. And then you can take that stylistic way of doing things, you can take that style and add it to your own. That's what I do. When I read, like, here's a perfect example. Stephen King wrote The Green Mile. There was a scene in there where the hero and his wife were involved in a terrible bus accident. The hero's wife dies, and her blood ran away red into the night. That's beautiful. That's just gorgeous. That's what I strive to do.
That's what you're striving to do.
And that's why, but you have to read, because otherwise I never would have discovered it.
You're inspired by others as well, which is incredible, and you're inspiring others.
Oh, I hope so. I hope I'm inspiring.
Roxanne Bland, it was a real pleasure to have you with us.
A pleasure to be here.
Want to say that again? We can do it again. We're going to use that take. You like that one?
Yeah, really.
Okay, here we go. I'll have you mention the website again, too. Roxanne Bland, it was a real pleasure to have you with us.
And it's been a
CUTV
pleasure to
News.
be here.
Give us that website again.
roxannebland.rocks.
roxannebland.rocks. And your blog is roxannebland.com.
Correct.
And, of course, your books are available at amazon.com as well.
Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Smashwords.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing this wonderful book with us. We wish you continued success, and thanks for being on CUTV News.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Jim Masters, CUTV News.